Hello and welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor. It's your host, Patrick Hogg. And we're actually going to go over to Scotland today. We're going to talk to someone from Glasgow. And we're going to take a little bit of a pivot from our normal conversation because actually the gentleman that we're going to be talking to today is not a chiropractor. He's not an osteopath, but actually he is a dentist. This gentleman I met on one of our masterminds. We were on a business mastermind. It was about 2 or 3 months ago. Really interesting guy. He already owns a clinic in Edinburgh, and he's in the process of. Is it Edinburgh that you own, or is it Dundee you own, and you're going to buy the other one?
Both own in the process of purchasing
Yeah,
Dundee.
perfect. So he's currently going to be running two practices. He studied 2 degrees. He did his initial degree in Glasgow in biomedical sciences, and he actually took a deeper dive into infectious diseases. And then he went on to continue his studies in dentistry in Exeter and Plymouth. He is not just a dentist, but actually works in facial aesthetics as well. Goes into a lot of the TMJ management, which I think, for me personally, as a chiropractor, we do a lot of TMJ management. And actually, it's something that we could take a lot from each other, and we can benefit each other's work by looking at things both on a dentistry point of view and a biomechanical chiropractic point of view. He also works as a mentor in the dentistry industry. I know this guy's got some absolute gems sitting between those ears. It's our special guest, Abraham McCarthy. So, Abraham, maybe you can highlight some of the things that maybe I missed about yourself, and maybe tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, listen, thank you, first of all, for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be able to come onto this and chat with you and just talk about some things. I'll learn a few things as well. Yeah, I'm excited. So as you said, I'm based up in Scotland. So for some of you listeners, it's a very far trek. Some people might be there already. And I live in Glasgow. My practice that I'm in at the moment is in Edinburgh, and like you said, we've purchased one up in Dundee. While we're on shutdown, we are going through the processes and implementing the systems that we're going to be using after shutdown lifts. So we're quite excited about that. We've not been idle. We've not been sitting on our hands. You need to keep doing things. So I say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. And you've got a family as well, haven't you? I know
Yeah.
that you've got a daughter.
Yeah, I've got a 3-year-old girl, 3 going on 70, Amara, and yeah, she's awesome kid, absolutely hilarious, um, a little bit cruel but quite funny girl. She's jokes, and I've been married for 5 years, been with my wife for 10. My wife's called Heather. She is a doctor. She's actually an infectious disease doctor at the moment, so she's in the middle of all this. Um, she's got a great personality. For her, she's just like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do. So she's not probably as perturbed as most people. She's probably quite cavalier, if I'm honest, and it takes the stress off of things.
Ironically, I think the people that are on the front line with the current situation with the COVID-19, the people that were on the front line with it all are probably the most calm, because my sister's the same. She works in the cardiology unit in Brighton, and she got pulled over to infectious because obviously they just needed all the staff over in one area. And there's a calm panic going on in hospitals. Like, it is a calm panic. Like, they've got everything under control. But obviously, it's the patients that are stressed about it. It's the
Yeah,
patients that are stressed, and that's what makes it really difficult for the doctors. Not the work. The work's the work. The work's the work. The work would, like, if it wasn't COVID, there would be different things walking into the hospitals right now, whether it's broken legs or people with heart attacks, and those things are going down. And guess what? Everything else is going up. And you can probably vouch for the same, because this is what my sister's observed. And obviously, this is probably what your other half's observing as well.
yeah, that's right. And I think we've been quite fortunate up in Scotland in the sense that we've not had the numbers of the number of deaths up here as opposed to down there. I've got a lot of friends who are doctors in England, and they, especially specifically London, and they found that they've been under a lot of pressure, and it's been busy. Heather reckons that they are about 50% capacity at the moment.
Right.
So in a strange way, she said, they're actually a lot less busy. And like you said, they're a lot less busy with everything else. And as we've got the lockdown up here, people aren't playing football, people aren't playing rugby, people aren't getting to car crashes, people aren't going out on a Friday night and getting wasted, people aren't doing stupid stuff, and people are just being more mindful before they phone A&E with things and going into hospital for little things. And so it takes the pressure off, and that's the whole point. The issue is that if if we if we let that up and the pressure intensifies, all of a sudden what is a manageable situation on a Monday turns to a hell situation on a Friday. And just because you have 50% capacity, it gets so much harder as you start to go up. So yeah, having it at 50% capacity is a good thing, I think.
Very true. Very, very true. So look, we're not going to sit and have a whole conversation about COVID, because if you
No.
want to know, more about that, you can go and watch the news, because honest to God, I don't think the topics stopped. The topic stopped. So we're gonna pick Abe's brain for something that's a little bit more interesting, and that could potentially be helpful going away from just chiropractic. So the point of this podcast is so that people can start to learn not only how to look after themselves physically, mentally, but also chemically as well. And we know that there are a lot of things that our environment or area, like what we do, is going to affect our health. Not necessarily just like, for me, what we're putting in our mouth is going to affect the way that our body works physically. But Abe is going to look at that same kind of scenario, and he's going to look and go, look, dude, you shouldn't be putting that in your mouth. Did you know that's going to do X, Y, and Z? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Abe, and he's going to tell us some of the things that he does to really kind of like look after himself, and some of the things that he finds most important explaining to his patients in order to actually, improve their dental hygiene and actually look after themselves in general. Because at the end of the day, he's a primary healthcare practitioner. He understands the immunology, he understands the physiology, he understands the chemistry, the biology. And so he's going to still be teaching his patients how to take care of themselves. And he's going to maybe tell us some of the stuff that he does in order to actually properly take care of himself.
Yeah. Yeah, so I suppose the best place to start is in the morning. If I aim to get up at 6 every morning, it's probably a little bit later than that. Anyone that's got an infant child knows that they get up quite early, but I'm usually up before my daughter. I'm the first person up in the household. I love a cup of coffee. It's one of my vices. But I've got an old-fashioned kettle, and it takes approximately 5 minutes for the water to boil. And in that time, I do stretches. Some people might call it yoga. The way I do it, nobody would call it yoga. But I do some stretches, and the coffee then brews and the percolator. So I'm doing that for a good 15, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Take my coffee, I go into my front room, and I put on some music with no words, and I read a book. And it's something that's either instructional, motivational, or it's either in business or it's in dentistry, something that's going to help me motivate myself, just sharpen my day, sharpen myself. And then I spend probably about 5 or 10 minutes just thinking about what I want to get out of the day. So Jim Rohn once said that never start your day until you know how it's going to end. And I think that's really important. And if you do that, you have direction. If you have 4 or 5 points that you can say, do you know what, I want to achieve these things. Some of them are personal. They could be, I want to go for a run, or it can be, I want to do this for my business, or I want to do this for a patient, or whatever. It can be anything. But if you have those 4 or 5 things to ground you, and it means that if you well, the whole point is to accomplish them, and you know that, yes, you're stepping forward towards your long-term goals. And that's a whole other thing. We'll come to that in a minute. I try really hard to not look at my phone from the minute I wake up until after I spend the time deciding what my goals for the day are. And I usually put them into my phone, and that's after I put my goals down, that's when I look at my phone. I'll have a look at emails, I'll have a look at a couple of messages that have come in, and that's when my day starts. Usually at that point, my daughter's up, we deal with her. And then phone calls, emails, whatever. And obviously, as everyone knows, work generates work. But truth be told, when I've got those goals down for the day, my compass is set. So if I start doing things that are leading me off track, I know I need to stop them unless they're that important that should have been my goal. And it's interesting how quickly you realize that, and I still do this, my goals for the day were really wrong because I should have been focusing on the things that are going to bring the house down rather than the things that are going to build it up. Sometimes you need to focus on one, sometimes you need to focus on another, and you just learn that with experience. And sadly, that can't be taught. You have to experience it.
Yeah, it's funny because we did a podcast on this with another chiropractor, and the title was "Fail Fast."
Mm-hmm.
Fail fast and learn from failure. Because this is the thing, is that you sometimes have to have a little bit of pain or something go wrong or have a loss in order to actually correct the ship. In fact, we were just on a call with someone else this morning, and we were saying that a sail with no rudder will just aimlessly go through the sea, and it makes no difference which way the wind is blowing. You just never know where you're going to end up.
No, it's so right, it's so correct. Because what happens if you don't plan your days, and I'm not saying to the minute shy because you can't do that, but if you don't plan your days, what will happen is life will take over. Sometimes that's important because life takes you in the right direction. But that's not often. Actually, life will take you in the wrong direction. You will just follow the waves. You need to have direction. And that kind of goes back to the goals. And I think goal setting is really important. Myself and my wife spent a year and a half ago, spent probably about 2 hours each working on our goals. And I know you're probably thinking, when you listen to this, that it's not necessarily part of dentistry or about chiropractor or about being a healthcare professional, but actually it really is. But this is more than that. This is about life, where we mapped out what we want our 20-year life to kind of look like. We don't know what we're going to be like. We don't know if we're going to be alive even, but what we would like to be doing. And we split it into the things that are important to us. That was health, lifestyle, family, finances, career. And then we took a step back to 10 years, then to 5 years, then to 3 years, then to 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, 6 weeks. What happens is all of a sudden, you say this is what you think will make you happy and content in these aspects of your life. So you've built yourself a roadmap to do that, and then you take action. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, yeah, why am I wasting my time doing this when I want to be doing these things? And it's great, it's fantastic. And that has been, for me, the day we did that, I got focus, and I'm still on that path. Some of my goals I haven't hit. Some of my goals I've got completely eclipsed. That's life.
It's actually really interesting as well, because when you look at it, like you said, 20 years obviously ahead, and then obviously you've made it bite-sized. So you've made it achievable. You've given yourself like timelines. And the thing is, right, is that actually, funny enough, we apply this. The way that we're talking about it, we're applying this to our lives. But guess what? Both me and Abe will apply this in our patients as well. So along the lines of, okay, this is the target that we want to aim in the first 6 weeks. And I do this with my clients all the time. In 6 weeks, we just want to manage the pain, the inflammation, blah, 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 blah. We want to resolve X part of the problem. Okay, the next phase is looking at stabilizing that. Okay, so we've got rid of how you're feeling, but actually that's no good getting rid of the feeling if you're not going to do the thing that's actually going to stabilize that and stop you going straight back to where you were. Because like you say, you've got this target, you finish your 6 weeks, and you finish at 6 weeks, and then you go, okay, now what? And because you have never looked beyond that and never looked at, and one of my greatest mentors, Ryan Ryder, said this, he calls it future pacing. You've got to pace what the future is going to be so that you don't overwhelm yourself when you get there.
Yeah,
it's not overwhelming. It's not overwhelming.
That's completely correct. I mean, when we are developing treatment plans for, especially complex treatment plans, and I think it's important for me to say that the way I run my practices is a little bit different from most people. I mean, I don't do tons of general dentistry these days. I do the things I enjoy. I do sedation, I do facial aesthetics, I do a bit of oral surgery, and it's very much a team approach. And patients are told that, look, this is how we're approaching it. We're rebranding at the moment. But everything that we do is so that patients know you're seen by a team, not a dentist. You have a team looking after you, not one person. And I think that's important. Even when you go to a chiropractor, I mean, I've got my own chiropractor up here who happened to train with with
We
with
actually,
Patrick.
funny enough, we worked in the same clinic.
Dara,
Dara
yeah,
Tyrrell,
yeah,
Abe's chiropractor in Glasgow, was actually the chiropractor that I took over. That I took over when I took over the practice that I was working in Hove.
yeah,
And actually, to this day, the chiropractor that I worked with, Dara was always kind of like their golden child. They were.
yeah. It's easy to understand why. She's awesome.
Oh, she's got such a great and lovable personality. She's Irish, and she's definitely got that love of the Irish in her, 100%.
She's hilarious,
She's got
absolutely
so
hilarious,
much
fantastic
energy, so
personality.
much energy, so much energy.
She calls me crazy. She's like, Abe, you need to just chill out and stop doing stuff. I'm like, you're a hypocrite. You're always up to something. But when you go into to her surgery, it's the team that sees you. Yes, she does the adjustment, but it's a team, and it's reminding patients like it's a team approach. And then, like you were saying, this forward planning, you need to decide what you want on day one as an outcome, because when you do, then you can say, right, okay, this is how we get you there. And I think a lot of patients, especially in the dental world, are not used to that, and a lot of dentists are just used to firefighting. And when we were taught treatment planning, you taught stabilization first, then periodontology, or hygiene phase. And the way to look at that is they're the foundations. You can't have your teeth can't stay in without good gums. So you work on your gums first, and then you do all the fancy stuff. You then do all the sexy cosmetic stuff, but you need to do those things first. And it's bizarre because some patients don't get it, and you need to take that time to spend with them, going, look, we need to do it this way, and this is why we do it this way. You get the best outcome doing it this way. And yes, keep your eye on the prize. The reason why we give you this image of you is so you remember that, because when it gets tough, and it will do, you'll have patients who need 4, 5, 6 extractions. They'll need implants, they'll need sedation, they'll need stuff that might scare some people, might excite some people. I don't know, some people are weird. They need to know why they're doing what they're doing. They need to know why. To me, everything goes back to why are you in this chair? Why are you getting an adjustment? Why are you doing these things? Why are you getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and stretching and pretending you're doing yoga? Like, what does it matter? But why? And that drives people. And if you can tap into that, life's easy. Well, easier.
You're doing those stretches so you keep your chiropractor Dara happy.
I started doing it before I went to see her, and she gets me in trouble. She's like, Abe, if your hip is sore, do not go for a run. I'm like, okay, fine. And I'll go see her the next day. She's like, you went for a run, didn't you? I'm like, yeah, a little bit. And then she gives me in trouble. She said, you can't sit there doing dentistry with your neck hanging off at awkward angles if you want to improve your spine. I'm like, yeah, I know. And she's like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, quit. She's like, you can't quit. I'm like, you help me, Dara. Any way you can, just help me.
Yeah. And this is a funny thing. I see tons of dentists, by the way. Dentists, unfortunately, it's a hazardous job. It's a little bit like a builder.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to hear. It's nice to hear, obviously, having the conversation with you now, how, there's so much crossover. There's so much crossover in the way that dentistry and chiropractic are basically managing things, is that you've got to set that foundation first. Once you've got the foundation, the healthy gums, which is, again, when chiropractic is looking at things, is that healthy foundation is just starting to obviously reduce that inflammation. And then that stabilization process can take place. Then you can start tackling the plaque or whatever it is. So maybe you can tell us a little bit, like, some tips and hints that people could probably take away from you better than they're going to take away from me. So some bits that people could implement so that they could start taking better control, or maybe start giving themselves some ways of actionably taking some goals.
So are you talking dental or just in general?
Let's go both.
Let's go both. Make
I
my
know,
difficult.
I know that Abe's like me. He could talk the back end off of a donkey. That's one of the reasons why we get on so well.
Okay, so I think some basic dental advice. Everyone knows about brushing twice a day and flossing, but one of the things that I see, and I'm guilty of it, we're all guilty of it, is just because you brush doesn't mean you brush effectively. And the reason why we tell people to brush for 2 minutes is because given enough time, you'll probably hit all the surfaces. for people when we come out of lockdown, it's worth going to see your hygienist, go see your dentist, and just spend time learning how to brush properly. And it's going to take you longer than 2 minutes if you brush properly until you get into habit of brushing, correctly. I had a patient once who completely thought I was a horrible human being because I said to her, "You have terrible periodontal disease and you've had it for a while, and it's because you don't brush properly." She's like, "I brush 3 times a day." I'm like, "Yeah, but you brush incorrectly 3 times a day." And of course, I've been doing it all my life. You've been doing it incorrectly for a large chunk of your life. I can't say for all of your life, but I can look back and see what you've got and tell you this is how you've been doing it incorrectly. And she's quite a difficult woman, but she did come back about maybe 6 months later and said, "Do you know what? You're completely correct. You sent me to the hygienist. You did this. You did that. Thank you." Now, that's the complete most basic thing I can say to people. Take that time, take your opportunity to see your dentist. You see them every 6 months, go see a hygienist. I think people should see a hygienist every 3 months, unless their oral hygiene's impeccable. And then you can make it every 6 months. I really do. And other thing as well, people who don't have teeth, I don't know if there's anyone that's listening in that situation. A lot of people with dentures think, "Oh, I don't need to go to the dentist anymore." One of the things that I don't know if people realize is that a lot of conditions are quite often found in the mouth before they're found in the rest of the body, and it's not a teeth thing. It's a mouth and face thing. Dentists spend a lot of time doing facial anatomy as well as oral anatomy, and I've diagnosed several things. And I'm not thinking about things like oral cancer and mouth cancer and facial cancers. That's a whole separate ballgame. I've diagnosed patients with Crohn's. I've diagnosed someone with vitiligo. They're just two things that come off the top of my head. I've diagnosed a lot more, and there are times when you're ignoring things, but it's harder to ignore things in your mouth because you eat and you talk a lot. Everyone does, no matter who you are. And you put things in your mouth, you've got a pen in there, you've got a finger in there, you've got whatever in there. And if there's something wrong, usually you pick up on it pretty quickly. If you're having regular checkups, if you go and see your dentist, get them to look at things, because there can be other underlying health conditions. Sometimes they're very basic, and it can be a paste or a pill that you take for a little while, it can sort it out. Other times they're more complex, but if you don't bury your head in the sand, you've got a chance of fixing it. And unfortunately, sometimes there's things that are a lot worse. And I'm really not meaning just cancer. There are things that are worse that do need treatment, that do need more significant and severe assistance. And you might have to have what we call a multidisciplinary approach, where you might end up with a neurologist, you might end up with like a clinician who's an oral medic, your dentist, and your GP to treat something, because it can be so debilitating. Things like trigeminal neuralgia, things like atypical odontogenic neuralgia. There's so many. I'm not going to go into them all today. So these are reasons why checkups are really important and valuable. And then I think last thing I was going to focus on was jaw pain. I get about 2 people a month coming to me saying, "I've got toothache," and they've got jaw pain. And I'm going to maybe piss off all the chiropractors out there, maybe not, maybe they're going to agree with me. When it comes to jaw pain, I think there's a golden triangle that we follow for the reason why most people end up with jaw pain. And people don't necessarily appreciate this, but your jaw joint is connected to the muscles, or mostly the muscles of mastication. So for anyone that's into their anatomy out there, so that's your masseters, your temporalis, your medial and your lateral pterygoids. They're connected to the jaw, which is connected to the teeth. And so that creates a triangle. Now, if you have a harmonious triangle, everything sits in harmony, and at rest, your teeth do not touch. What happens, especially for most people that end up with jaw pain, and I don't like the term jaw pain, or TMD as it used to be called, stands for temporomandibular joint dysfunction, is that it's a misnomer for the most occasions. It's usually what is known as myofascial pain. It's usually that you've got a parafunctional habit. That's usually either clenching or grinding or both. And as you clench and as you grind, your teeth touch, and they touch for more than 2 seconds. They touch for a long time. When your teeth touch, it activates the muscles, mostly the masseter, but also temporalis and the lateral pterygoid. Anyone that goes to the gym knows that when you When you engage muscles, what do? They get bigger because you're working them. When you relax and release, they recover and they grow. Now, what happens in your mouth? You don't get a chance to rest it. You're chewing, you're doing what I'm doing, talking constantly. And the muscles get bigger, they hypertrophy, and they cause ache and pain, and they pull. The jaw joint then starts to get pushed in places it shouldn't. There's a disc in your jaw joint, it's articulating disc, and your joint, when it sits in the base of the skull, has a little vestibule that sits out, and that's called your articulating eminence. When your jaw opens and closes, there's two movements. There's rotation, and that's when you half open your jaw, and there's translocation, so that's bodily movement. That disc then allows your jaw to slide forward to a certain point. If that disc is sitting slightly anterior in front of the jaw joint, when you pull open, it pops and it gets pulled, or when you close, it pops back. And that's because for most people, now there are other reasons why, and we do not have anywhere near enough time to go into that, but that's the reason why people get clicks in the jaws, or you can get crepitus. So that means that the disc, the space between the jaw and the base of the skull has been reduced, and as it's pivoting on this articulating eminence, the disc starts to get worn, and you get crepitus. And then you can get other things like effusions, but that gets into the realm of oral maxillofacial surgery. And so you end up with a sore jaw, you get myofascial pain, and you're grinding and clenching your teeth. Then what happens, it gets more complicated. You start to lose facial height, your teeth start to go aslant, and then you go to the dentist, you're like, I want this all fixed. You get it done, and then 5 years later, you go back, you're like, this didn't work, it's all gone back. It's much more complicated than that, and that's why we look at these things. We look at, I think anyone that looks at just the jaw in isolation it's a dangerous position, because if you fix the jaw, great, but you haven't fixed the teeth. Now, sometimes the jaw is the problem and you don't need to touch the teeth, but you need to analyze that to assess, are you doing that? If you fix the teeth and you haven't fixed the jaw, do you know what? You end up in a catastrophic situation. And I really do mean catastrophic situation. I have seen implants fail, and people have spent tens of thousands of pounds on their treatment that has completely failed because the dentist, the surgeon, didn't look at that approach, didn't look at the jaw, didn't look at the muscles. They had someone who had really bad myofascial pain. They didn't bother treating it because they saw the big numbers and they wanted to treat it, and boom, everything's gone to pot. And I'm not sitting here saying that I'm the guy that will make everything perfect. I mean, I don't do implants, and two, I've done plenty that I'm not happy with. But this is the approach I take now, and it has to be that approach, because you have to be careful. You're dealing with people's lives, you're dealing with day-to-day issues, and nobody will give you more hassle than a patient who's got jaw pain because their life's miserable.
Yeah.
They can't open the mouth properly, they can't eat properly. It is a horrible situation, so you need to be careful, and people need to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, I deal with quite a lot of jaw pain, and I have to admit, a lot of that stuff I 100% agree with. I quite regularly get my gloves out and get into the pterygoids. I tend to find that the digastrics are quite heavily involved, but normally in a point of view that they become disengaged. So I've noticed certain muscles get disengaged and certain muscles are overengaged, and it's almost like when I look at other areas, say for example, my patients that sit too much, their pecs become very tight, the muscles in the front of their neck become very weak, the muscles in the posterior part of the neck become very tight, and the muscles in the upper part of the back become weak. And you almost get this imbalance. We call it a crossed posture, because you get a cross of weak muscles and a cross of tight muscles. So you get tight and tight, weak and weak, and you get this change in adaptation, like you were saying about the position of the actual jaw, and then you get this clicking and clunking and grinding, and the nerves start getting irritated, and the joints start getting irritated, and the muscles start getting irritated, and it becomes much more complicated than, okay, it just clicked here, can you fix the click?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what everybody wants. Everyone goes, well, it clicks and I don't like it and it hurts, and it's like, well, great, but you're only thinking about like the one thing. There's so much more, and like you just rightly said, is that you can go very superficial and get rid of the pain, and then it's all going to come back 6 months, a year, 6 years. We don't know how long it takes to come back, but those things will change again if you don't actually address the underlying issue. And this is one of the things I absolutely love about dentistry, by the way. absolutely love about dentistry, because they're very, very, very good at communicating. Not only let's get this fixed, but let's prevent this. They're probably the only profession that I know in this country that has managed to educate the whole public that prevention is better than cure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dentistry's moves to prevention, and especially in a time where the mass public is very much, I've got this, fix it. I've got this, fix it. We're very reactionary or reactive. And dentistry always pays to be proactive and prevention. And then we will deal with things, because things will always come up for most people, and we will deal with them. But do you know what? We're preventing more than we're dealing with. And that is so important, because people want you to pick something up, because you feel like you're doing something. When you drill, you feel like you've done something. When you give advice, you don't feel like you've done something. But ultimately, that advice sometimes is far more important than that drill.
Hence why we're sitting on this call right now.
Exactly.
Because this is the thing, is that we know that actually teaching people to take care of themselves is going to benefit them. And like the old saying goes, I give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll feed himself for life.
Yeah, and feed his family too.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know. You never know the butterfly effect of what might occur from that.
No, yeah, agreed. And I suppose with hits and tips for jaw pain, and I really do think it's one of the things that for some reason we've just, as a society, seem to ignore, but those people who deal with it know how prevalent it is. I think number one culprit for jaw pain is chewing gum. You chew chewing gum. I know people that chew chewing gum all day long, and they come in like my jaw's sore. No wonder. You've engaged your muscles like nobody's business. You've done the equivalent to just sit all day with a 16-kilogram weight and just be doing 16-kilogram dumbbell and just be doing arm curls all day. That's all you've done. You've done is all day. And then if you then go to the doctor and go, my arm's sore, what have you been doing for the last 2 weeks? You're doing arm curls. How much? Around about 18 hours a day. Like, no wonder your arm's sore. Stop doing it. Stop chewing gum right now. And I know people are going to be thinking, but dentists recommend chewing gum. We do, but that's quite specific. And I think we need to start giving more guidance with it. I mean, I would recommend, if you can't get to mouthwash, if you can't get to a toothbrush after you've eaten, using chewing gum for 20 minutes after you've eaten, that's fantastic. It gets the saliva flowing. If you use one of sorbitol, xylitol, really good for you. And then spit it out, stop. But don't be chewing gum because you're bored. It's gonna damage your jaw.
You just look like a cow in the middle of the field.
You have those people that sit there and you see them, they've got like 2 or 3 and
so annoying as well.
It's horrible.
It's such a bad habit.
It is a bad habit. And then you're stuck.
It's like smoking, really. I think it's just one of those things that people just get addicted to, and they just
automatically just pop a couple of tabs. And the thing is, like, from an environmental.
By the way, we're talking about chewing gum, not tabs.
Yeah, we're still talking about chewing gum. But what do you do with it afterwards? People put it on the ground. They leave it under benches. They leave it under my seats in my waiting room. It's horrible.
Not good.
And then yawning. I know it's going to sound strange, but when you yawn, you're stretching all those muscles. As some of us you mentioned, both digastrics, you're stretching as well, and also myhyoid. So if you do suffer from jaw pain, stick a fist underneath your jaw and stop your mouth opening too much. Big tip.
I can see that.
Yeah, exactly. You stick it underneath there, it stops yawning so much. Now, this is going to sound like a really obvious one, and people are going to go, shut up. But actually, if you find that you clench, when you're clenching, unclench, and that sounds really obvious, but when someone tells you something, when you never noticed something before, the second you now notice it, or when you see it, you can't unsee it. If someone tells you you clench, and then you go, okay, and they say stop clenching, they go, right, fine. Then they go back to their life and they go, oh, and if I say thousands, I'm not underestimating. People come back to me and go, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean now. But it's never the day you tell them that advice. They always kind of go, yeah, you're a bit of an idiot. And they come back and go, understand why you said it. Stop clenching. Just like, if you know you're clenching, stop doing it.
Yeah. And the thing is you don't necessarily it's like anything. It's like anything. I say this to a lot of people all the time, is that if you're doing something but you're not aware that you're doing it, like, that's forgivable.
Yeah.
But if you're doing something and you know you're doing something and you continue to keep doing it, that's just idiotic.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Is that people might not be aware. They've come to you with a problem, and they might be doing something they're completely unaware of. And like you say, as soon as you shed light on it, it's very difficult to then miss. It's like that stain that was on your carpet that you didn't know was there, and someone goes, "Oh, you've got a stain on your carpet," and that's it.
You see it every
The
day.
rest of the afternoon, you're just going to walk past it and you go, "Oh man, I really need to get rid of that stain."
Yeah.
And that's it. Like once you see something, it's very difficult to unsee it. And as Abe says, it might seem really trivial to most people that don't clench or grind. But if you're one of those clenchers or grinders and you're not aware that you're a clencher or grinder, and that is the reason why you're causing jaw pain, all of a sudden you've hit the light on it.
Exactly. And then the last thing I would say is splints, either soft splints or hard splints, for sleeping and for certain exercises as well. Problem is, if you are a clencher or grinder, and I can testify, I suffer from, I'm a clencher, and you could conceivably clench from the minute you go into REM sleep until you wake up. You might be clenching the whole night. You probably aren't, but do you know what? Even if you only clench for half the time you're sleeping, that's 4 hours of clenching. That's 4 hours of muscle engagement, and then you wake up with your face is aching. It is aching. So the various splints that you can go and get, I think there's something you can buy over the counter. Don't do that. It doesn't make any sense. You need to have it examined, and you need to determine: do you clench or do you grind or do you do both? And what is your jaw doing? And so what type of splint should you have? Because there's different types of splints. And splint therapy, this is I've always kind of wanted this platform to say this: split therapy is not an overnight treatment, excuse the pun. It really isn't. You've been clenching and grinding probably for around about 20, 30, 40 years, depending how old you are. You can't get a splint for 2 weeks and then expect it to fix 40 years, 20 years, or 30 years of a problem. It's going to take time. That's why I usually do a review after 3 months. Right? Splint therapy takes months, if not years, to work if dealt with properly. Another thing, it takes a human being approximately 21 days to form a new habit and 90 days to become reprogrammed. Putting a splint in your mouth is invasive, and it's big and it's bulky and it's obtrusive. The first 3 to 4 weeks, nothing's going to happen. You're getting used to wearing this bloody thing in your mouth it's not supposed to be there. After that point, then give it 3 months and then get reviewed. 4-month review point for a reason, with some exceptions. I've been wanting to say that to the masses for a long time.
It's really interesting. I personally, dentists have always made the best patients. Dentists have always been my best patients, and the funny reason being is that obviously you listen to Abraham and the way that he obviously talks. Things take time, and this is one thing that we cannot cheat. And obviously, having done a biomedical degree, he'll understand the physiology, the biochemical processes that are taking place in the body. And this is what we know about pretty much anything in the body, whether this is to do with oral hygiene, whether this is to do with joint, TMJ, grinding, exercise, weight loss, improved mentality, motivation, getting rid of the, everything takes time to recover. You're not going to go from A to Z in one letter. It's just not going to happen. And so it's those stages, and then you've obviously got to build your foundations, and then you build your and once you've got that thing, then you maintain it.
Yeah, exactly. Maintenance is super important, because that's the bit that it's easy to take your foot off the gas. When you get to that harmonious stage, it's so much easier to take the foot off the gas. And do you know what? Actually, I think as humans, two things as humans: we are the only species that routinely fail to meet our potential. You take a gorilla, you take a dolphin, you take a fish. A fish can almost swim; it dies. A eagle can't almost hunt. It has to hunt and be successful, or it dies. Humans, we do not achieve our potential, and we get by. That's weird. We don't do that. And then when we get to a point where everything is good, when you work that hard and everything's at stasis, and you're like, yes, I'm here, you take the foot right off the gas, and that's where it becomes dangerous. And that becomes with your relationships, with marriage. It's so easy to kind of take things for granted and go, do you know what, everything's fine, and you chill out. Or with friends, with your health, it is very much, it's so easy just to keep on pedaling along, because you think everything's perfect. And that's the point where we need to kind of just remember we need maintenance, and that's where your checkups come in. That's where your reviews come in. That's where, you know, if I had it the way, if I could run this country, I would recommend that everybody goes for a 6-monthly health checkup, a health screen. And Americans kind of sell it a little bit, but you would have a check, you get your cranial nerves checked, you'd get your back, you get your mouth, get your feet, you'd get, you go see a podiatrist, a chiropractor, a general medic, well, maybe not a general medic, they just have a different work, sorry, kind of just someone looking at your general health, doctor, all in every 6 months or every 12 months, depending on what you are, and you would catch so many things. Now, this is insanely expensive. To do
But
the
it's not as
test.
expensive. It's not as expensive as a lot of the healthcare. It's interesting, actually. Like, so what you're basically saying. So hip replacement in the UK costs something. I think it's around £10,000. Which
Yeah.
you tell me, Abe, like how many extractions and how much stuff can someone do for £10,000? Like, people look at our bills because we're private healthcare. People look at our bills and think we're expensive. But if you compare to what we're paying in the end, by the way, guys, you pay for this. You pay for it in your taxes every single month. When that cash gets taken away from your paycheck, you're paying taxes. For the reason being is that someone's having a hip replacement that's costing you £12,000.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
if
we
we
just do it
paid
in a
for all these
different way.
professionals to do this prior to the situation, it could potentially save that.
Yeah, completely correct. And healthcare has always been set up to be reactive, and there's certain things that you have to be reactive to. Trauma, cancer, and some autoimmune conditions. And well, not just some autoimmune conditions, quite a few conditions that will arise spontaneously or in certain groups of people, and there's nothing that you can do about it. You didn't know that was going to occur. No one knows they're going to get leukemia, knows they're going to get trigeminal neuralgia. It occurs, and you have to be reactive. But there are so many conditions that we can be proactive about, we can prevent, and I include a lot of mental health conditions in that. And every time I speak, I also talk about, I mean, the mental health as well. We need to treat our mind like a muscle or like another organ in our body, and we need to have someone take care of it and help us take care of it, because where our mind goes, our body follows. And if your mind's not right, your body's not going to be right. The conversation that Patrick and I were in beforehand was with my cousin. He was explaining to us that sadly, I don't know the guy's name, a bodybuilder sadly committed suicide yesterday. And from what we were made to understand is that he was in a position to break through, become one of the top bodybuilders in the country, have a great coaching career, mentorship career with him as well. And then sadly, again, another person loses their life to suicide. If it was anything else apart from suicide, you know what? There would be campaigns, there'd be crisis, there'd be the way we would treat it, if it was anything apart from suicide, would be so robust. There'd be campaigns everywhere. You get leaflets to the door. It'll be on Instagram, it'll be on Facebook, it'll be everything if you look at the numbers. But because it's suicide, because of mental health, because it's taboo, it's forgotten about. And for me, in my practices, where I work, one of the things I try and speak to my staff about is that I'm here to support them, but not just in their careers. It's up here. You can't see me tapping my head, but it's up here as well, because it's so important. And that obviously comes from someone that's been through plenty of things, been in dark places, and always been able to pull through. But it's not I think with mental health, yes, you pull through, but it damages something. And so just because it seems as if you've pulled through and you've gotten away with it and you're okay, you've not. So all you can do is learn from it. And I would say, try not to do it again. Sometimes you're not doing anything, it's something that befalls you, but your actions are still your actions, and you need to just be careful about them.
I love it. Dude, we could probably go on like this all day, couldn't we?
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. So I think we're probably almost 2 hours on the phone with each other today.
Yeah.
So I'm very aware. I'm very aware of your time. I'm very aware of our listeners' time. But I wanted to give our listeners an opportunity that if they wanted to reach out to you, they wanted to reach out and maybe learn a little bit more. Maybe there's someone that's kind of heard this. Maybe they're a dentist and they maybe want to reach out to you for some mentoring. They've heard something they really like about you. How can people get in contact with you? How can people maybe learn a little bit more about what it is you're doing? Just tell us some ways that maybe people can find you or find out more about you.
So I suppose the easiest way to get in contact with me is through my email, and that's abraham.mccarthy@gmail.com. McCarthy spelled McCarthy.
We'll add this into the description below. Abe will send it over to me and we'll ping this in the description.
Yeah, exactly. Facebook, we'll put that on as well. So Abraham McCarthy on Facebook. Our practice in Edinburgh at the moment is called Pearl Dental Care. That is all changing. We're ripping it down and rebuilding it up stronger and better. And our practice in in Dundee is called Smile Tech. And again, we're going to be changing the name of that probably in the next year or so. But if anyone's got anything they want to ask, drop me an email, contact one of the practices, and people will get in touch with me.
Amazing. Look, this has been so much fun. But I'm going to give you one last chance to rivet on and give us a wow at the end. So words of wisdom, something that you can end the show with, something that maybe you like to live your life with, or a quote, something you really feel like might add some value to the very end of the show.
Yeah. So the one thing, every morning when I get up, when I don't want to get up, when my wife's snoring, there's these words that I say to myself every single day, and it's from Jim Rohn, and I'll use these words until I die. And it is what is easy to do is also easy not to do. And that means that, yes, you can do these things that will push you forward. You can write your goals down and you can get up early because they're easy to do. But at the same time, if you don't do it, nothing gets done, because it's just as easy to not do it. So you need to choose to do those things.
Guys, take some action. Like, if you've got a problem with your body, take some action. If you've got a problem with your teeth, take some action. Like, guys, it's so true. It's so easy to do, but it's also so easy to avoid. But procrastination is the greatest killer in creativity. Procrastination is the greatest killer in productivity. So if you're procrastinating, you're not succeeding.
Yeah, exactly.
Abe, it's been so nice to have you on the show today. I've learned loads. I know that everyone else is going to have learned a lot as well. We'll add all of his contact details into the description below. I just wanted to say a very big thank you from me and from my listeners for jumping on and having this call with us. I'm hoping that people learned as much as I did. I'm hoping people, and this is the great thing about this, and this is the great thing about talking to other professionals as well. So I get to learn stuff that I wouldn't learn from my own field.
Yeah. Listen, I just hope I haven't bored everyone, and it's been relevant, and it's important to, like you said, it's important to give value to everything that you do. And so thank you very much for having me on, and until we speak again, thank you very much.
That's absolutely my pleasure. And for all those guys that have been jumping on the call with us today, that's another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor with your host, Patrick Hogg. And again, just one big last thank you to Abraham McCarthy for jumping on. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.